Welcome to this ongoing soundtrack series where I analyze the musical score of the greatest movies, TV shows, and video games. It is here where I discuss how a soundtrack complements its corresponding title along with how it came to be. In this episode, I'll be going over the Western sci-fi score of Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy's HBO series Westworld, composed by Ramin Djawadi. Within the episode, I'll go over the technical details of the soundtrack, the show's player piano, and how Djawadi composed his piano covers. I have thought how I would approach Westworld in this series, and through speculation on Season 2's Shogun World, I can only imagine the show's music will expand and adapt to the new elements and setting. With this said, I can only imagine I'll be making a separate video for that season, and any other with a distinguished score. Strictly speaking, this episode will examine Season 1's soundtrack. Before we start, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing to find more soundtrack analysis on other titles in the future. You'll find a new analysis video every week. With all that said, let's begin. The overall theme of Westworld is deftly placed within the score, especially in the show's opening arrangement. What makes this main sequence extremely clever is how it develops a curving arc musically and visually. The sequence forms a story illustrated from scratch. The song starts with a strong cello, which conveys the sensible human passion in a collection of notes. Immediately after the cello's opening notes, the piano replicates those same notes, but in a reverse order. At this time, we have two players, a teacher and a student, one following the other and in proper sequence, creating a duo that carry a comparable quality. The pianist is the student as well as the focal point. He is learning to make his own arrangement with the assistance of the cello. With an established theme between the two instruments, an introduction of the string section surfaced to strengthen the melody, which signifies the duo's creation is in motion and accelerating quickly. The piano then overtakes the rhythmic string section to harmonize a more convoluted basket of notes than it originally began with. Much like the piano's jump, the strings enact a frenzied chorus that keeps building up to push back the piano. This is the student/piano enforcing his own principles in this arrangement, and in turn becoming hungry with their newly acquired resources. The cello is leading the stringed instruments to handle operations and ease the piano. Now there are two opposing teams. After the furious chorus, the melody enters its conclusion, with both sides bombarding each other. Before the strings are able to complete the melody, they are halted by the abnormal and cascading piano line that concludes the song. The desperate piano is in a fury and unruly to where it's overlapping its tempo in the conclusion, with the cello resolving in a broken and shapeless tone. The main opening sequence focuses on a story of deception, and since this main theme represents Westworld's central motif, the song is highlighting the show's identity. So I don't spoil anything, I'll let you guys figure out who these instruments represent. Ramin Djawadi's intention for the show's theme was to depict a distorted amusement park, through familiar theme park tones blended with a dark personality. What makes the show's personality distinctive is the dominant players within the orchestra. Leading instruments like the piano are made to express certain aspects of the show. The old upright piano, or the tack piano, would empathize the scripted fabrication of the theme park. The lead stringed instruments, much like the leading cello, underlines human poignancy and emotions. For example, the flashback scenes revolving around an android who recalls a past traumatic experience, much like Maeve's recollection of her daughter, holds the theme of heartache, which is indicated by the cello. Electronic instruments laced with digital effects would accentuate the world in its current state, and the shrouded secrets held by leading character roles. Overall, the score of Westworld is profoundly technical as well as mechanical. To explain more clearly, its music is much like a line of code. Perhaps one of the greatest players that exhibits the central theme of Westworld's park is the player piano. That sole instrument is equivalent to the nucleus of an atom. It's a system that executes the android's program duties as well as their starting positions. The tack piano repeats the theme Sweetwater to restore the scripted dialogue of the robotic host's narrative. Much like resetting a computer to its default setting, these hosts are reset to a clean slate. It's presumably controlled within the command center in the real world to keep a leash around the herd of robotic bodies. Not only does the piano carry out motor functions to recall an earlier time, but it's a jukebox for people visiting the park. Although the process isn't shown on screen, a guest would submit a request for a given song that the player piano has pre-programmed in its database. The famed music box plays tunes like Soundgarden's Black Hole Sun, Radiohead's No Surprises, and The Cure's Forest. As unusual as it sounds, these piano covers fit perfectly in a produced world set in the Wild West. It reveals to the audience the unnatural impression of this reality. The viewer's immersion into the Westworld reality is crippled and brings us back to the concept of a scripted narrative. To further reveal the park's fabrication, Djawadi composed an orchestral arrangement of the Rolling Stones song Painted Black to overlay a scripted action sequence. The score keeps bringing us back to apprehend that something is truly misguiding, rather than let us become absorbed in a false storyline that concludes the same every time. After receiving high praise for his recognizable sound on Game of Thrones, Ramin reestablishes his sound for Westworld on a new level. This resilient skill allows the composer to sculpt his music in a contrasting avenue, rather than being adequate with an accent that has already proven successful previously. Ramin was strikingly interested in the Westworld project with Nolan, as he was driven to compose music for film when he was fascinated with the score of the 1970 version of The Magnificent Seven when he watched it as a kid. Since he appreciated Western spaghetti films, he was prepared when he heard Nolan and his wife were to construct a remake of the original 1973 Westworld movie. So when Djawadi approached Westworld during production, an unusual time for Ramin to start working, since he usually arrives on set during post-production, he started writing solely based on his interactions with Jonathan. Most of the work composed for the show was created without any visuals, but when it came to working on scenes like the Painted Black sequence, he arranged the orchestra to calmly highlight the dialogue to allow the amplified moments of the song to be more conspicuous. It's these covers that persuades the viewer to heed to the score, and allow us to see just how technical this composition really is. When it came to adapting the various elements of these modernized tracks into an orchestra or, for the bulk, on the player piano, Ramin had to combine the harmony and the melody with all its instruments and vocals into an instrumental piece. In the case for the player piano, a single instrument. Since these tracks are exclusively different than their original versions, it's important to maintain the elements of the show within the songs without breaking boundaries. Before I give my final thoughts on Westworld, don't forget to hit the red button below to stalk my videos. If you don't, you'll never ever find these types of videos again. I'll make sure of it. I wasn't able to explain everything I wanted about the show in a single episode, such as the sci-fi portion of the score, but I might move those thoughts into the Season 2 Score UnCovered episode. Let me know if you want more episodes covering this series. Based on your interest for Westworld, you might like to know that I made an episode on Game of Thrones on this series. Find the Score UnCovered playlist in the end card of my outro or in the description. If you want to make a request for a movie, TV show, or video game for Score UnCovered, let me know here on YouTube or on my Twitter page. The music of Westworld is incredibly clever. We hardly come across a score that renders an eminent role in the story's development process. Not only is the soundtrack of the show representing a motif, but we see how the music isolates the raw piano player's programmed tunes to signify repetition in the world's reality. The score is interactive and allows a fluid transition between the existing world and the scripted one. Djawadi's representation carefully draws the audience into our modern spaghetti western, with its combination between antiquated and contemporary orchestral tones. Westworld's soundtrack is the mimic of the show's theme park, extraordinary and mystifying. I want to thank you for watching this episode of Score UnCovered. I try my best to keep out the spoilers the best I can for the people who haven't had a chance to see these titles. I'd rather uncover the score rather than the plot, so thank you for sticking with me. Ending the episode here, once more, thank you greatly.